Lupus is an autoimmune disorder that is syndromic. It affects almost every tissue in the human body, and more importantly, it has a propensity to affect more women than men. And even worse, it's a devastating illness that affects more minorities.
Over the last few decades, there has been very few new therapeutics for the treatment of lupus. Part of the reason for that may be for the lack of new investigators coming into the field with new ideas and new ways of looking at things. My research focus over the last 2 decades has run a gamut of diseases. And so what I'm doing at this point is I'm bringing my knowledge from these other diseases and how we've treated them with targeted therapeutics and different ways to image therapeutic efficacy. And I'm now applying it to lupus. A lot of our research focus right now is on lupus nephritis. So we're targeting drug delivery vehicles to the kidneys to treat the disease, as well as something a little more groundbreaking in that we're treating the spleen to try to alleviate the whole systemic disorder. It's a novel idea. The spleen is the main route through which all the blood in the body flows. And so we believe that targeting a single organ such as that will allow us to have new therapeutic options going forward.
In the lupus research area, what we like to do is look at the formation of deep vein thrombosis. So this is important for lupus patients because at certain ages and certain times during their disease progression, they're at a much higher risk for deep vein thrombosis than other individuals in the population. We therefore hypothesized that we could look at how these things form in a basic model. And we like to look at those things using inflammatory imaging agents and intravital microscopy. So we're actually looking at the progress of the deep vein thrombosis or blood clots as they form in this lupus model.
The research in our laboratory is focused on a particular phosphatase called SHP2. Very interestingly, this particular phosphatase was something that we had been working on in our laboratory in connection with congenital heart disease for at least 20 years. It turned out that that same phosphatase and mutations therein also were causal to children that were developing lupus, which seemed a little unusual. So likely there seemed to be a connection. When we looked a little bit more carefully at the role of SHP2 in SLE, it turned out that it was incredibly important and that its activity was significantly increased in patients that have lupus, even in the absence of the mutations that cause the syndromic disorders associated with that mutation. So that meant to us that likely SHP2 activity was linked to the onset, at least in the propensity of the development of SLE. Because of that, we're very invested in trying to understand if there are ways that we can inhibit this particular phosphatase in order to come up with a new therapeutic for treatment of this disorder.